Hello, and welcome to another edition of Navigating the Coronavirus Economy. I'm Tom DuFore, CEO with Big Sky Franchise Team, and this is a series we've been doing to help our clients and other folks in the franchise community and just the business community at large to give some tips and tricks and ideas on not just surviving, but thriving in this new coronavirus economy, as we've been calling it. So this is the next edition, and I today will be your host and presenter, talking through some tips and things that we have found come through. Now, to be fair, this topic and idea was not original from me. It was from a client of ours that had pointed out to me a new thing. So if you got our email that said why you should double your marketing budget, there are a few reasons why. Number one, if you're thinking about marketing and going through this with the coronavirus, I said you should consider doubling it because a lot of folks out there, I know in business, have cut their marketing budget by at least half. So if you've cut it by half, double it. You'll get back to where you were before. For the others that have stayed the course and have kept your marketing budget where it is, I suggest that you should consider doubling that. For a few reasons. Number one, that other businesses that you're probably competing with, there's a good chance that they have cut their budget, so your competition is less. And number two, the other reason is what I'm about to show you. It's a little trick that a lot of us probably have forgotten about. At least I can say I have forgotten about. I can't say for you or for anyone else that's tuning in here. But this is just to showcase. And one final thing, if you did tune in to the live edition of this and you're watching the recording session of this saying, hey, this isn't quite exactly word for word the way it was, well, you're right, because we forgot to hit the record button on the first go around. So the good news is I had to ask my guest back, which is yours truly, and here we are. So without further ado, I'd like to tune in and show you exactly what I'm talking about and where you should be spending and why you should be doubling your marketing budget. And that trick of the trade here is Google Trends. And so what I'd like to do is show you all, if you go to Google Trends, many of you have probably been there, but you just go to trends.google.com, right? And we can go to here where we just were, and we type just the phrase buy a franchise. And Matt, if you are watching, who gave me the idea for this, thank you very much. Again, I cannot take credit for that. So we type in buy a franchise, and here is what pops up. So if we notice over this gives us the last 12 months, and we'll look at a couple others here. But what's interesting to note, and literally yesterday, from yesterday to today, there was a shift. So today is Saturday. The webinar was yesterday, Friday. And so here's what I want to point out to you. Number one, this just shows you the search volume of what's been going on Google over the course of the last month. And when you click on here, interest over time, you click on the question mark there, it says numbers represent search interest relative to the highest point on the chart for the given region and time. A value of 100 is the peak popularity for the term. A value of 50 means a term was half as popular. Okay, so basically it means during the last 12 months in this case in the United States, and we'll do a breakdown in a little bit to show you could do worldwide by country and other regions. So it's pretty neat. So we can see where some peaks were over the course of the last 12 months. So here's a peak here back in August, the end of August of 2019. Here's a little peak here in October, and you can see things kind of drop down. And here at the first of the year, back in February of this year of 2020, we see that's our peak. And as we notice here, there's a little dip in the next week, and then things popped back up here in February, and then the coronavirus stuff hit. And now take a look at this chart. So as you take a look at this chart here, you see how far down this fell. What I'd like to point out, what is really interesting, is that even at the bottom of the recent coronavirus pandemic, fear, concern, everything that's a hysteria that's been going on, take a look at that. Look at the search volume. Back in December, and even right around Christmas time, of last year in 2019. Look at those numbers, 34, 32, and the bottom here was 30. Almost the same number. So just to put things in perspective, so Christmas time last year, or right around the first week in December, probably right after Thanksgiving, we saw the lowest search volume. And now we go back here and we have a low search volume. And then magically, look at where we were back just a couple weeks ago, or the at the end of April, the first part of May. We were at a 90. Then it dropped to 65. Then it popped up last week to an 89. And now it's showing that it's trending downward. My opinion for this coming week is I think despite the shelter in place, now economies are starting, states are starting to open up, businesses are starting to try to get back to some level of normalcy. I think what we're seeing here is just that it's Memorial Day weekend right now, and that I think it's just forecasting just lower search volume in general, probably across the board. And the weather has been nice in a lot of places now. Weather's starting to break, so people are getting outside. That's just my opinion. But as you can see, I think this is rather telling data. So this is why I'm saying don't just be cutting things off. Look at here. If we take a look here, back over this first part, again, we're seeing similar trends here. Now, this is just over the last 12 months. Now, let's go back 5 years. Take a look at the 5-year trend. And what do we see? Well, we see some high peaks. Here's a pretty close peak, 99 in January of 2016. We go back to, here's another peak. In March, looks like March of 100. This was our peak here in March of 2017. And you can kind of see these ebbs and flows and ups and downs and so on. And look at, here's the coronavirus. But look at right where it pops back up just a month later. Just a month later, it's at a level that is equal to what was showing here back in January. So you see these levels that are coming and going, these ebbs and flows. So we hit this bottom, but it pops back up. So it leads me to conclude, I'm not a fortune teller, I can't predict the future, but it sure is a great indicator that look at what's happening and do this yourself. You know, I mean, I just typed in buy a franchise, Google Trends. You know, this is nothing saved. This is all free, public data. Give it a shot, check it out. Okay, now we go down here. Let's take a look at this. Over the last 5 years, we can see where the most popular searches have been for buy a franchise by state. So look at, we have Georgia, Nevada, Florida, South Carolina, Louisiana. Maybe a couple states you might not have thought about. Maybe you should be looking at these states as well if they're searching for that. If you're not looking at some of these states, drill into it. Here's the next top 5. North Carolina, Texas, Alabama, New York, and Maryland. Just some food for thought. Let's go ahead and take a look at the last 12 months again, and let's see how the chart changes. So when we look at this, here's Nevada and Georgia. Look, they swap spots, but they're still the top 2. Then we have Florida, Maryland, and Louisiana. Anybody out there would have guessed Louisiana to be in the top 5 for buy a franchise searches? Probably think the answer is no for most of you tuning in here. So look at Missouri, North Carolina, New York, Nebraska, South Carolina. Okay, so here's some really cool telling data that we can use as a tool for us to go from. So if you're thinking about marketing, you're thinking about franchising your business, you're thinking about investing more in lead generation, I really think now would be a great time to consider it, just based on these trends that we're seeing. And with the unemployment rate where it's at, the likelihood that 100% of the employees that have been laid off, that they're going to be 100% of them will be hired back in the next 6 months is probably not likely. It's probably extremely unlikely that it happens. And so when you think about that, these people are going to become job searchers. And as they become job searchers, this is going to be something that you are going to want to be in a position to take advantage of. And while we were on the webinar here yesterday, while we were on the webinar yesterday, we had a couple good questions. A really nice question come out, and the question was, where would you? The person, his name was Nick, he said, Tom, where would you spend your marketing budget? Where would you spend money? Where would you do that? And I said, well, certainly it's going to depend on your specific franchise, your specific territory, your specific location, your specific goals, a lot of variables that go into this. But if you're saying, hey, just from a general perspective, where would you start? Well, here's where I would start. And this is how we advise the majority of our clients when we're just starting out. Number one, we lump things into three broad categories, three buckets. Bucket one is no cost, low cost franchise lead gen. That means we're taking a look at referrals. That's a primary source. And when you look at the annual franchise development report or the Brand Connect report that comes out, or any other franchise sales data report, in almost every situation, they talk about referrals being the number one source for lead generation. It's consistent. And I don't think that's any surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise for anyone who's a business owner, an entrepreneur who's ever run a business. You know, word of mouth and business and referrals, that's going to generally be your best source. So that means targeting things like your friends, family, customers, vendors, suppliers, anybody in essentially your greater sphere of influence becomes a potential opportunity, at least to be broadcasting it, because your family member may not buy it. You may not want them to buy it, but they may know somebody who does want to buy it, and they get referred in. Bucket number two is anything that's paid advertising, and I think that's what Nick was asking when he asked that question. You know, where would you spend your money? Well, if I don't know anything, our general recommendation, we're working primarily with emerging brands that are just starting up, that have never franchised before. And so very often they have a small budget to begin with. And so we're trying to get the best performance and give the greatest flexibility with that budget during that time period. So we like to take a look at what that marketing budget would look like with some very flexible spending. So we look at Facebook and Instagram ads. They're easy to turn on and easy to turn off, and they're very cost effective. So you can shut them off and on almost immediately. You know, you can turn it on for 10 seconds and turn it off. You know, so it gives you a lot of flexibility. If it's working, we keep doing it. If it's not, we tweak and adjust. And if it's still not working, shut it off. Then we take a look at other sources that you spend or are able to spend money on, and that you can turn off and on generally pretty quickly. Those are the franchise lead aggregators, or so commonly referred to as the portals in franchising. And so those tend to be great resources. If for many of them, you're able to sign up for a short-term contract to get things going and try it out for a little while and get it going. And these are companies like Franchise Gator, Franchise Direct, Biz Buy Sell. You know, these are companies that we've worked with, our clients have worked with, and use as part of their budget. And then there are other things you can add in, different things, long-term things like publicity and SEO services and trade shows, and all kinds of alternatives that fall into that bucket that you can get into, and I'd be happy to have a separate conversation or someone on our team do that with you. And then the third bucket number three, is the franchise broker networks. And we separate that out as its own category because a lot of our clients that are emerging brands are not familiar with how the process works, and just they may not be comfortable with the commission payout on the franchise fee, which may be around 50% or so of the franchise fee in today's world. So I set that up as separate, and I found that franchisors are either love franchise broker networks or just have no interest in working with them. So we keep that as a separate category. And so I see a mixed bag, see great results, certainly. Love franchise broker networks, have had a lot of success with them over the years. So, but that's how we break it down. Bucket 1, 2, and 3. So no cost, low cost, paid ads and franchise brokers. And then whichever you may have an interest in working in, we can advise accordingly. So Thank you very much for tuning in to our this latest installment of Navigating the Coronavirus Economy. Again, I'm Tom DuFore with Big Sky Franchise Team. And if you've ever thought about franchising your business, or you've been considering it for a while, or maybe you've been on our email list, reach out to us. There's no cost for a consultation, or for a franchisor that's looking to take that growth to look for some outside help, for some marketing, for some franchise sales support, whatever it may be. Give us a call or an email. We'd be happy to set up an appointment. No cost, no obligation to you. Thanks for tuning in today. If you found value in this, share it with anybody you think this might be helpful with. Thank you. Enjoy the day. And we're looking forward to taking the next steps together.